Thank the member. Recognize the member for Burnaby Lougheed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising again for the debate on Bill 11, this time on the motion to not have it read a second time, but that the subject matter be referred to the Select Standing Committee on Education, and further, that the committee be empowered to be able to invite witnesses to appear before it for further deliberations. I support this motion to send the bill to the committee for public consultation and deliberation because Bill 11 is a rushed, illegitimate piece of legislation to begin with. We have an all-party select standing committee here in the legislature for just the kind of work required dealing with bills of this type, where we can have a sober second thought with real input from the public. Bill 11 lacks any legitimacy because it fundamentally failed to consult those that it impacts, the key education stakeholders, many of whom, by the way, are in fierce opposition of this bill, and I've had many phone calls and emails from the stakeholders on this matter expressing their concerns and not having anywhere else to go to get their voices heard. So given that this legislation is brought in without much consultation, if any, we have all the more reason to support this motion to allow exactly the kind of public consultation that should have been done in the first place. As BC lawmakers, we should welcome the opportunity at every chance to hear from those that this ministry has omitted in hearing from while drafting this bill, like the professional teachers, experts on teacher professional development, the elected school board members, superintendents, secretary treasurers, and so on and so forth. Because it is important for us to carefully canvass the amendments that Bill 11 proposes to make. So let's take a look at the administrative directives. This bill gives the minister the authority to compel school districts to take part in shared service agreements and gives the minister the power to appoint an official administrator if the boards fail to comply. So this goes against the principle of co-governance, Mr. Speaker, that the government has committed to honoring. The amendment further provides the minister with the authority to force different school boards to work together to find the so-called administrative savings through shared service agreements. But the problem here, as we talked about before, some boards may end up having authority over other boards through this kind of arrangement. And in other words, it can make some boards subservient to the other boards and at the discretion of the minister. The can be ordered, quote unquote, to enable a school board to participate in or undertake a project regarding the improvement of student performances or, quote, another matter specified the minister, end quote. This grants essentially the minister of broad powers to order a directive on any matter. Also, the minister can override other legislations to achieve the objectives of the directives. So given the substantial changes that may as well be unconstitutional, given that we are imposing authority over elected members in the school board, no different than the members of this legislature. Now, my question is, where were the school board members during the drafting of this bill? And moving on to the professional development front, let's review the proposed changes there. This bill does not include specific examples of the professional development that the government might impose on teachers or consequences that may result if they fail to comply. That is, again, left to regulation. Amendments do not provide any role for professional or education faculties in defining what constitutes a professional development activity. It is unclear whether this definition will encompass the broad range of professional development activities in which teachers are already engaged. And so again, I don't see teachers invited for input for matters that directly apply to them. The government did not consult with the BC Teachers Federation on changes to the professional development. They do say that they will collaborate going forward, but without any specification and timeline as to how that's going to take place. Moving on to the access to student information, the proposed amendments of Bill 11 erodes student privacy. That's obvious in the title alone. The section 170 of the School Act entitled, quote, non-disclosure of student records, end quote, is deleted, and it is replaced with a new section entitled, quote, student personal information, end quote. So whereas the current section 170 has strict controls over the ability for the ministry employees to disclose student personal information, the amendments that are proposed here are permissive in nature. So there is a key question regarding these amendments, whether they allow disclosure of student personal information in ways that are not allowed previously. The government should be questioned about this, and the lecturer does deserve an answer. Is it going to follow the Part 3 of the Protection Privacy section? And it is also not clear to whom the personal information will be disclosed. Is the government envisioning data linking between public bodies? If so, will it be providing notice to the Office of Information and Privacy Commissioner? Will the public bodies undertake a privacy impact assessment as required? And so again here, Honorable Speaker, students and parents whose very lives are involved are again not a part of the discussion. So whether it's the administrative directives, professional development, access to student information, we are talking about changes that will directly and severely affect school boards, teachers, students, and parents, yet none of them seem to be invited for discussion as this bill was drafted. And again, that's all the more reason why the motion makes sense, which I support fully, that this bill be not given a second reading and be referred to the committee for further considerations. So now there are 10 members in this House serving on the so-called Select Standing Committee on Education. I serve on the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services and previously in Health. And at both of committees, there was a robust public consultation as the Finance Committee toured around the province. The Health Committee met several times where we had healthy deliberations between all party members that were in that particular committee. But I was surprised to find out that the Select Standing Committee on Education hasn't met this session. It hasn't met in the entire 40th Parliament so far, and in fact, it hasn't met for 8 years. And so I am beginning to wonder why we have the committee in the first place if it's not going to be meeting at all, let alone have 10 members that are assigned to serve on that. I know certainly the committee members in the Committee for Education on this side of the House have been actively calling for the activation of the committee so that they can deliberate and discuss what's happening with education in this province, be it classroom size, composition, government relation with stakeholders, budget considerations, and more. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for a bill of this nature to be able to invite witnesses to appear before it so that the deliberations and all these concerning points that's been raised so far can be talked about and canvassed more in detail. Now, I do want to quote an article that I came across the other day. It's by Lizanne Foster, and these are the kind of the public input that you'll be definitely missing out if in the absence of public consultation, and maybe perhaps that's exactly what this government is trying to do, is that they're not interested in hearing this kind of input. But here I will quote her letter. Dear Minister, I have heard you reference your grandchildren several times when you talk about the rationale behind your policies as a BC Minister of Education, so perhaps this analogy will make sense to you. Let's say, hypothetically, that your grandchildren are sick and needs to see a doctor. Would it be okay that the doctor's professional development being prescribed by a car salesman? No? Okay then. Perhaps you can explain why my graduate degree and 26 years of experience making decisions about the education of approximately 5,200 students makes me unqualified to make decisions about my professional development. While I wait for the explanation, I must admit that your proposed restrictions on what I can or cannot do for my professional development are the least of my concerns when it comes to Bill 11. A bigger concern is how I will be able to stand in front of my Civics 11 students and teach them about democracy when they learn in the news that Bill 11 will give you, as Education Minister, the power to replace democratically elected school trustees. End quote. So as you can see here, Honorable Speaker, we are not just talking about teachers. We are talking about regular parents. We are talking about academia. We are talking about elected officials, all raising their concerns about how this bill was drafted, what it proposes to change, the kind of threat that it imposes to our democracy. And these are all the more reasons to make sure that we refer it to committee for further considerations. Now, with that said, I think I will conclude my remarks there and pass it on to my colleague to take it on. Thank you.